Uh, yeah, hi everyone. I hope I'm audible, right? Can somebody respond?
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes, you're audible.
Okay, yeah, all right. Okay, welcome to the second session of DecaLect Season 2. I am Naufal PT, and we are quite happy to see you all in this session. We have, you might have already got your introduction to the lecture series that we call DecaLect. This is the second session, and in the introductory notes which we had shared around, we had mentioned it that we might change the dates from that mentioned in the brochure of each talk, depending upon the availability of the speakers and other constraints like the university exams and net exam, these kind of things. So in the beginning itself, we had a couple of other unexpected issues coming our way. So we had to rearrange the order of the lectures. Today we have Dr. Shafeeq Karinkurayil's presentation, which is supposed to be the third presentation as per our brochure and the posture that we had shared with you in the beginning. Um, our next presentation will be uh, 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 the one on sports culture by Dr. Veena Mani. So there are changes in the order, and there will be changes in the timing. I mean the dates also, because the university had recently declared another line of exams very recently, and then we have the net exam starting from 20th to the 28th of this month. So we have a couple of constraints in our way to run it as per a pre-planned schedule. So I expect you would bear with us for that. However, we are trying to finish all these lectures by the end of this year, by December 31st at least. That's our plan. We will be going ahead with that. We will see how far we can meet that as per the plan. And guys, today's presentation is on film culture. I'm not going to brief about the presentation, primarily because we haven't made any plan. I mean, I haven't instructed the speaker to deliver it in any particular way. We've given all the freedom to the speakers to schedule, to formulate their own plans. We just gave them the broad area which we expect they are experts of. And today's presentation is by Shafeeq. Dr. Shafeeq is a faculty at the Manipal. We will have a formal introduction about him, but before that, I must acknowledge that we've been trying to reach Dr. Shafeeq for a couple of other sessions earlier in PSMO, but because of many other constraints, it didn't happen. And finally, this is a platform we got Shafeeq in. So we're quite happy, sir, Dr. Shafeeq, to have you here in PSMO for our sessions. And initially, the collect was planned for the students of PSMO, especially the degree final year students and postgraduate students. However, we thought of opening it up for registration for those who are from other institutions. But looking at the response in the registration, we are in fact quite surprised the kind of reception the program's advertisement had got. And now we had to change the priorities to the audience from other colleges than PSMO. So in fact, we had to ask our students to wait for a while to log in. We will give priority to the students and other registrants from other institutions. And then if there is vacant spaces, you guys can join, is the instruction that we had shared with them yesterday onwards. So that in fact makes me very grateful for the kind of response you guys gave. And most of you were quite interested, it seems, from your engagements with us, that you've been asking about the links, you've been asking about the sessions plans and all. So we are quite happy, with immense pleasure and pride, in fact. I would like to welcome you to the second session of this DecaLect, and uh, with immense pleasure and gratitude, I would like to welcome Dr. Shafeeq also to this presentation, to this session for his presentation. And I would like to call upon Najia, one of our coordinators, to formally introduce Dr. Shafeeq, our speaker of the day. Najia, would you please?
Yes, sir. I hope I'm audible.
Yes,
I'm
you are.
audible,
Go
sir?
ahead. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Mohamed Shafeeq Karinkurayil is Assistant Professor at Manipal Center for Humanities, a constituent unit of Manipal Academy of Higher Education, Manipal, Karnataka. He offers courses in literary and cultural studies, including film studies. He received his PhD in cultural studies from the English and Foreign Language University, Hyderabad. His article, "The Islamic Subject of Home Cinema of Kerala," appeared in Bioscope South Asian Screen Studies in 2019. His essay, "The Absent Fullness of Not Yet Cinema," appeared in India International Centre Quarterly Special Issue on India Cinema in 2021. His essays related to also appeared in Chalachitra Samiksha, Census of Cinema, Campus Alive, and Biologist. His other research include migration cultures, especially Gulf migration in Kerala, and his works focus on the literary and the visual aspects of this migration. His essays connected to this topic have appeared in South Asia, Journal of South Asian Studies, South Asian Diaspora, and Dastavesi, the Audiovisual South Asia, among others. Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Shafeeq,
Okay,
you can
yeah,
start
all
with your
right.
presentation. Yeah.
So I'm not able to, this share screen is disabled for me. Can you enable it? Because I have a PowerPoint. It's okay.
Yeah,
Is
it
it?
should be done.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you, generally, the Department of English PSMO, for this opportunity. Thank you also, especially Naufal, who is a friend uh, from Hyderabad, for inviting me. No, in fact, Naufal had invited me twice before, but for some reasons, things did not happen. Now, I can only see my screen. Okay, so just in case I'm not audible or something, you will have to tell me, because I will not be able to read your chat messages. Is that okay?
Sure, sure, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So everything is clear, right? I mean, right now it's audible, it's
Yeah,
proper.
it's
Yeah.
visible. Yeah, it's
Okay.
fine.
All right. So today the objective of this presentation is to introduce the participants to a few texts in the academic discipline of film studies that move beyond the film text and extend their analysis to the wider cultural context in which these films are made. In the process, the talk also introduces the participants to study films beyond meaning and in the realm of affect. And this also opens up new ways of thinking about the fascination for cinema. So this is the modest task that I have set for myself today. And let me tell you how thankful I am to all of you for being here in this talk, listening to me, intending to listen to me on a Friday evening, which is actually quite a luxury. So, my thank you to all of you. I can't imagine a crowd listening to me on a Friday evening. Okay, so we are in the past decade, we have seen a lot of changes in Indian cinema. All of us are aware of it. Cinema has become quite down to earth in a way, in the sense that perhaps now all of us know someone who is there in the film industry or someone who is making films. And yet, we still have a lot of fascination for cinema. Something which we would have imagined wouldn't be there in a time in which cinema was just confined to a few people. But in spite of having a lot of people, we ourselves know in the film industry, I mean, perhaps anyone in the film industry is just one person away from us. We are that connected to, I mean, today's Indian film industry is actually that quite that widespread, right? In spite of which we have this fascination for cinema, and this presentation is in a way an accounting of that fascination, but not in terms of meaning, as I said, but in terms of other things, in terms of what other things happen in the cinema. So, in fact, what I'm going to do is to introduce you, and it is quite possible that some of you, or maybe all of you, know these texts. But just maybe just refresh your memory on a few texts that signal this new turn in film studies, which is about film culture. And I've put the S in bracket because it's never one culture, it's all cultures, right? Okay. So, one another era before our present era in which there was a huge change in technology was in the late 60s, when suddenly filmmaking became a little more democratic than it used to be before because of the technological changes, especially handheld camera. Now, it is at this time that we have something called the avant-garde trying to make alternative cinema. The same thing is mirrored, in fact, like many of the film theorists were also filmmakers. So it was many of the filmmakers were also film theorists. So it is mirrored in a way in film studies, because in the late 1960s is when you have the rise of ideological criticism in film studies. Ideological criticism in the sense that people stopped speaking about how cinema reproduces the real space and time, and they started speaking about how this idea of space and time is actually not natural but actually cultural. So that is the meaning of the word ideological here, in the sense that it is not as if time, how we understand time, is natural, or how we understand space is natural. It is not as if the film is producing the natural effect of space and time. It is actually the other way, which is that we have, because of our insertion into particular cultures, we have already imbibed a particular conception of time and space, and the cinema in fact reproduces this. So the theory, and especially there was this group of people called the apparatus theorists, they argued that what cinema essentially does is to reproduce the Renaissance subject, the Renaissance man. So who is this Renaissance man, or what is this Renaissance man? So, as you would have learned in other disciplines also, Renaissance is a time in which man replaces God as the center of the universe. Man replaces God as the center of the universe. What does it mean? It means that even God's existence, so this is not to say that people stop believing in God. That is not what it means. Even in Renaissance time, God is very powerful. But what it means is that during this time, even the existence of God was predicated on the ability of man to think about God. In the sense that, I mean, if you go to this 17th century, Rene Descartes' philosophy of I think, therefore I am, what it says is that the only thing that I can be sure about in this whole world is that I exist. Maybe this table, this laptop, that mug, this paper, none of it exists. Maybe all of it is just illusion. But then there is this thing which in me believes is having all these thoughts. Now, as far as that exists, it is the guarantee that I exist. But the thing is, see, look at my condition, I'm doubting all of this. To doubt is to be imperfect. But imperfection can only happen if there is perfection, which means God exists. This was Rene Descartes' argument. My imperfection points to the perfect being, which is God. So this is essentially what is the meaning of man replacing God as the center of the universe. So this is also the time in which an earlier way of looking at the world is replaced by a new way of looking at the world. And what is this new way of looking at the world? So if you look at Renaissance painting, what happens at this time is that this is the time in which there is a scientific conception of space. If you actually look at it, even Rene Descartes himself is a surveyor with an army, who is working in an army as someone who is measuring land and stuff. What happens in Renaissance is that even though there were paintings even before which showed background and foreground, during Renaissance time, what we understand to be space is subjected to scientific calculation, such that Renaissance painting reproduced this way of looking at the world. It produced something called depth of field. So Renaissance painting produced this idea of a world which is in fact three-dimensional. There is background, there is middle ground, there is foreground. There is a particular point in which this painting will disappear. Like, I mean, it will go like this, right? So basically, now if you look at this Renaissance subject, in itself is actually a product of technological development, because there is something called the monocular this telescope, which is invented and then makes its way to Europe, which is invented elsewhere in the Arab world. It makes its way into Europe. This new technology of monocular, it basically produces a new human being for whom the world is now observable with his eye. So it is coming from this technological development that you have the conception of a man who can now observe the world, the scientific man, who can observe the world and make observations about the world. Which means that now the world became observable not from a God's point of view, but from a very human point of view. So this is the ideological condition or cultural condition in which you have something like the Renaissance painting, which produces this depth, like, I mean, in the sense that if you look at, let's say, Leonardo da Vinci, the Last Supper, you have those windows behind, and you have a way in which the room is the widest in the foreground, but then it becomes narrower towards the background, which is to suggest, which is to provide the illusion of depth. So in the 1960s, when film theorists are looking at the film text, instead of saying, oh, that this is a wonderful machine which reproduces space and time, they are saying that our conception of space itself is a very ideological conception. It is a constructed conception. It is social construction rather than anything natural. And what films did was to actually reproduce this frame in modern technology. So, what films did is to actually have these three planes: the geographical plane, the frame plane, and the depth plane. The geographical plane, the frame plane, and the depth plane. Geographical plane, frame plane, and the depth plane. This is what camera. So basically, what is camera doing? Camera is not just a technology. It was a technology which was already molded according to a particular ideology. So this is what in the late 1960s, the apparatus theories, or this ideological criticism which came up in the late 1960s, this is what they argued. It is in this context that you have
Shafiq,
sorry, yeah.
I suppose you're not changing your slides, right? We're still on the first slide.
Not on the, no, actually not.
Oh, then I think it was not changing.
I mean, I changed, sorry,
Yeah.
I changed one slide, but I think maybe I will have to show it in this not full screen mode. Perhaps I have to show it in this, or maybe I should put my full, okay, 1 second, hold on. Okay, what I will share my entire screen and then I'll go to my PPT.
Yeah, try that.
Okay, so now you can see the PPT, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So it's on this other slide, how to
Yes.
read a film, James Monaco. So this is what I was saying. So there is a geographical plane, there's a frame plane, and there's a depth plane. And this is essentially what the camera reproduced. So it's a technology which was in fact reproducing an ideology. All right. So it is in this context you have writers like Laura Mulvey, and I think maybe all of you know about Laura Mulvey. You have already studied about Laura Mulvey and the male gaze. You have a lot of theories like Kaya Silverman, or many of the theorists who are questioning the ideology of cinema, whether it is on questions of gender, whether it is on questions of what is how does cinema produce pleasure, all of that, they are basically coming in the wake of this particular theory, that that cinema is actually reproducing an ideology. But now so now the slide change, right, Naufal? Hello.
Yes, yes. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Change.
So see, if you look at Laura Mulvey, or if you look at any of those theories, there are certain assumptions that they are making about cinema. So what are these assumptions? Their first assumption is that films want to sustain the illusion of reality. So, in Hollywood cinema, for example, the actors are not allowed to look at the camera. So, this is called prohibition. The reason that they give for such a prohibition is that if the actors look at the camera, the illusion of cinema will be shattered. So, in Western theory, film is a private world in the sense that the actors have to act as if it is a self-contained world and we are outside that world. The actors cannot acknowledge in the film that we as audience are looking at them. So the effect that Western Western film produces is that it is a hermetic space, it is an enclosed space, it is a private space, and we are in another private space, and we are in fact peeping into that space. So in the sense that the film should never acknowledge that, I am doing this in front of other people, in front of an audience, because that will shatter the illusion of cinema. This is precisely why in Western cinema you can do private scenes, you can do nude scenes, for example. The reason is that within cinema it is private. The cinema does not acknowledge that this scene is being viewed by maybe thousands of people, because as far as Western idea of cinema is concerned, that is an enclosed space, and whoever is watching that without their knowledge. So this is why in Western cinema, the actors, or in realist cinema in general, actors are not allowed to look at the camera. So because they have a particular illusion to sustain, and this illusion is that film is reproducing reality. So the audience should be able to be inside that world and forget about this world. So when we are watching a movie, our universe should be that universe. We should forget about this universe. If both the universes coexist, then cinema will remain cinema. The only reason that it can sustain some kind of identification is that it gives some illusion of reality. So, for example, if you look at Laura Mulvey's theory, Laura Mulvey is saying that we cannot look at the woman directly, we can look at the woman through the man. The female actor is appropriated for the audience through the gaze of the male actor. The question obviously is, why can't we look at her directly? Of course we can. But the theory is that such a thing is not possible because it will destroy the idea of illusion of reality. So I hope that is clear. Now, the second assumption is that the film spectator is an individual. Even though we are watching the movie with thousands of other people, with hundreds of other people, the theory is premised on this idea that when I watch a movie, I am an individual. I am not belonging to a nation. I do not belong to a race. I do not belong to any such bondage. I am an individual, which is why much of this theory, in fact, rests upon very psychic properties of individuals, unconscious, or desire, drive, all of those things which are supposed to be based in the individual. So these theories, I'm speaking of the theories, okay, in the post 60s, those theories which came in the wake of ideological criticism, they assumed that the film audience is not a collective body, It is a set of individual bodies. So, each person watches the movie as an individual. So, as this pure abstract individual, not as an individual who has worldly ties. Third one, these theories is premised on this idea that the film spectator is immobile, the film spectator does not move around, and is silent. Of course, it comes from a tradition in Western theater in which you are supposed to be silent. It's like a respectable. I mean, we will come to that, but the thing is, the idea is that all these theories assume that the spectators are not speaking to each other, that the spectators are not moving about, they are just immobile in their seats, they are silent, they are completely engrossed in these images that they see in front of them. And the last one is obviously the idea is that this film watching takes place in dark halls in which you're not able to see each other. All that your eye can see is the world on this screen, which also therefore makes it easy for us to identify with that world, to be someone in that world, to be affected by that world, and therefore forget the fact that this our world is a different world and that is just an image. So again, there is this illusion of reality that is sustained throughout in the cinema, and these theories also reproduce that idea of cinema. And now comes the breakthrough, which is that in 1986, Tom Gunning, he writes this essay, very short essay, called The Cinema of Attraction. The Cinema of Attraction is just attraction. I have written attractions here. It's a mistake I often make. It's just attraction. The Cinema of Attraction. Now, in cinema of, see, if you go back, if you look at Indian film studies, they have, of course, questioned the first 2 points. So if you look at the works of Madhav Prasad, for example, Ideology of the Hindi Film, 1998 book, Ideology of the Hindi Film by Madhav Prasad, he is questioning this idea that in Indian cinema, in Hindi film, do we have the illusion of reality, or do they assume that the film spectator is an individual? I mean, an individual who does not have any of these bondages of the real world. If you look at Ravi Vasudevan's book, The Melodramatic Public, again, these are precisely the points that are questioned. Similarly, going back in 1986, 1987, there are articles, for example, Geeta Kapoor writing about mythological cinema. There's Ashish Rajadhyaksha writing about Phalke's cinema. All of them question these first 2 points, which is that in India, does film want to sustain the illusion of reality? And they are saying no. Is the film spectator an individual? No. In recent years, for example, in the context of Iranian cinema, the same questions are asked, and then they are also saying no, that is not the case. So it's a very Western concept. Now, but for the rest of my talk today, I'm going to actually concentrate on the last 2 points, the last 2 premises, which is that, I mean, these are premises of the post-60s film theory up to the 1986 period. The last 2 premises being the film spectator is immobile and silent, and spectation takes place in darkened environs. Now, in 1986, when Tom Gunning says something about the cinema of attraction, he is saying that this entire film theory, this entire film theory that we saw, which includes Laura Mulvey or Christian Metzer, all of them, all this ideological criticism, it is based on itself on certain historical misunderstandings. What is that? Tom Gunning says that when cinema came in the initial years until let's say 1916 types, one does not really have narrative cinema. Now all of these theories are based on narrative cinema. Tom Gunning says that, but actually cinema's origin is not in these dark halls in which people are sitting and not speaking to each other. That is not how cinema began. Cinema actually began in fairgrounds. In fairgrounds means what we, I am actually not very far from PSMO, by the way. I'm from Valanjiri. So, in our place, we call something exhibition, right? That is fairground. So there are all kinds of, there'll be this guy who will not get electric shock. There will be this, the well of death, exhibitions. There'll be Eiffel Tower or, Taj Mahal, all of that. It is all about, this fantastic stuff, right? Tom Gunning is saying that if you look at the history of cinema, that is actually where cinema originated. Cinema was not initially exhibited in these dark halls in which people are sitting. Cinema was in fact initially exhibited in these exhibitions, in these fairgrounds where people are moving about, where it is not dark. People are constantly speaking to each other. People are making noise. They are there. What are they there for? They are there to see this wonderful machine. See, there is this new machine which can show movement. Oh, you want to see a train going? Okay, let's go. Let's watch this thing. It was not about telling a story. It was about these fantastic things which this new technology has now made possible. Oh, you can be here and see America. Or you can be here and see France. Or you can be here and see a train. There's no rail around. But you want to see a train, you can. The fascination was with the machine itself. So that is his first point, which is that early cinema was about it being an attraction rather than being about the narrative. So even something like Trip to the Moon, it is all about the magic that now camera can show. If you have watched Trip to Moon, it's it's very simple. It's a simple plot of a group of people going to the moon. It's a 1902. Am I mistaken there? I think, basically 1902. Yeah. George Miller's movie. He is saying it's not about the story. It's about what cinema can show you. Secondly, all this thing about cinema wanting to produce the illusion of reality is a later development. Early cinema addressed its spectators directly. It did not assume that the spectators lived. It did not assume that the spectators does not exist. Do not exist. It in fact assumed that this is a performance which is meant for a spectator. So he gives the example, and the third point is, of course, I told you that already, which is that cinema has its origin in where people crowd and people speak and people are loud and people are moving about, rather than dark and immobile and silent places. Yeah. So he gives example from his first example comes from an 1896 movie, The Bedtime for the Bride, in which you see it is the first night kind of situation. So there is the husband, there is the wife. The wife is changing her clothes, she's undressing. There is a blind between the husband and the wife, I mean, the woman and the man. Now the man is looking at the woman through some hole in the, in this blind. But the thing is, the point here is that the woman, in fact, is looking directly at the audience, is speaking directly to the audience. So, like, unlike what Laura Mulvey would say, which is that, in order to look at the woman, you have to look through the man. Here you have an example of cinema directly acknowledging that it is being watched. So here are some slides from it. So you can, on your left you see the husband, on your right almost in the center you see the woman. There is that curtain, that thing in between, and then see, she is in fact speaking to us. As she undresses, she is looking at us, while the husband or the man there has to look at her through a hole in the, through the crack in the blind. Now, similarly, he gives another example from 1907 movie, The Teddy Bears, in which the story is the story of this girl going into a bear house when the bears have left, and there's a papa bear, mama bear, baby bear, and they have this food ready, and she tastes one, and this is too whatever salty, this is too this thing, and then that story, and then there is this big bed, a small bed and the little bed, and then she one is too rough for her, whatever, and then she falls asleep in the child's. So that is the story, and then the bears come. So that is the story. It's a well-known story, Goldilocks. But what happens in the movie is that there is a specific sequence in which this girl is there in this house, and she's moving around, and then she sees a hole on the wall, and then she looks through that hole, and this is what she finds: bears dancing and dancing and dancing and dancing. So basically this goes on for like 5 minutes in the movie. If you look at it, there is no narrative value to this. This is what basically Tom Gunning is saying, which is that it is not about the narrative, it is about what this thing can do for you, what this new technology can do for the audience. Like, it is basically showing wonderful stuff, amazing stuff which could not have been imagined in an earlier it's all about the fantasy, this the marvel of technology itself. So the point here being, which is that when you have new technology, when this technology becomes the center of attention, it also produces a particular form of the movie, and the form of the movie is that it is all about attraction. It is all about affecting you physically. So attraction is actually not just attraction also means the way in which a movie can affect you viscerally, can make effect on your body. So it's actually a term which was coined by Eisenstein in the Russian context, and Tom Gunning uses that, many years back in early decades of 20th century. Tom Gunning uses it in 1980s to basically develop this theory of cinema of attraction, also to say that cinema is not about this intellection, it is not about this contemplation, it is about being moved physically, it is about being affected viscerally. Now, so basically, Tom Gunning's that moment, this 1986 moment in which Tom Gunning is speaking about the cinema of attraction, is basically, so it's it's a turning point. So it's like, okay, many of the assumptions that film studies made so far has to be corrected. So another important development in the context of early American cinema, especially in this, trying to see what are the possibilities that early cinema holds for today, then that is concerned. So another major book which came out in 1991 was Miriam Hansen's Babel and Babylon, in which Miriam Hansen says that, see, it's not that kind of romantic. Development of cinema has a lot to do with the kind of profits that cinema could make. So it's all still capitalism, but at the same time, one cannot deny that early cinema had a lot of radical possibilities. So if you, I mean, in the sense that if you look at the title of this book, Babel and Babylon, so Babel, is the biblical metaphor for a time in which human beings stopped making sense to each other because their tongues were confused, right? When they tried to make this star, and then God decided to descend upon them, and then there was confusion, so confusion in their tongues, and then the sons of Shem had to disperse into the various corners of the world because they could not understand each other anymore, and thus is the metaphor of Babel. And Babylon here refers to, in fact, this text. If you look at this book, this particular image there comes from this movie by D.W. Griffith called Intolerance. So it is a shot of Babylon, the historical Babylon. So it's a very high budget movie, long movie, some many hours movie, very high budget movie, a lot of technological advancement. So the point of the title of the book is to say that from there was a period in which film was like Babel, which means that the films spoke a lot of languages, and then it eventually reached Babylon, which is this empire under this one, in the sense that it was a unifying kind of a language. So, from a confusion of tongues to a unified language. So, in the book, she says that how the development of cinema was asynchronic, which is that different forms of, it's not, her theory would be not that, it did not like have a single point of origin. Cinema originated at various points. And, that is precisely why it can actually have different imaginations for different people. So, there are, in the early 20th century, there were many different kinds of film shows. For example, there were these traveling, film shows, road shows. So they will go from one village to another village, collect money from people and show this one movie. See, these are not movies, okay? These are like very short, very short films, like, just some attractions. Then there was this establishment called the vaudeville, in which there are all kinds of shows, like, magic and this and that. But one of the shows will also be films. So, among a list of shows, there will be this comedian, there will be this magician, there'll be this contortionist, and then there'll also be this film. Then there is this other, I mean, there was this one period of Nickelodeon in the early 20th century, which were these small halls which were very cheap. It gets its name from, 1 nickel was the admission fees, which was very cheap. So these were located especially in working class neighborhoods. So there are working class immigrant kind of neighborhood. So there will be this Jewish neighborhood, there'll be this Italian neighborhood, and they'll have Nickelodeons, where men and women of the neighborhood will pay a very cheap and spend some time there, watch what is there and stuff. Now in Nickelodeons as well as in exhibitions, which is another way of showing, like I mean, they'll have all these fairgrounds types. I mean, the other there'll be a regular exhibitor, not traveling ones. What characterized them was that, so this early cinema, as you know, is silent cinema. So if you look at this time in Nickelodeons or exhibitions, the people who exhibit this, and the exhibitors, they had a lot of control over how this thing, in the sense that that film, I mean, it is not one thing, it is a series of stills, right? Now much of early cinema, because, and this is precisely Tom Gunning's point, because it did not have a narrative, it does not have a narrative, it can be ordered in very different ways, because nothing will happen, because there is no central kind of a structure. So what is in the middle can come somewhat later on in some other place. It was basically in the power of the exhibitors to show this movie in the order which they want to show. Nothing happens to it. Not only that, they will also control how to narrate these incidents. So as you know, it is silent cinema. Silent cinema, however, does not mean that people are just watching it without any sound. Usually there will be some music playing. There will also be a narrator who tells the audience, okay, so this is what is happening, or I mean, who will explain the scenes to the audience. Now at this point of time in the Nickelodeon era, the exhibitors had a lot of autonomy, because I mean, the film form is such that you can actually cut and mix. Not only that, they will also have, so basically in each neighborhood it's a different story. It will have different jokes. A Jewish neighborhood will have Jewish jokes. It will have idioms which are basically organic, which are drawn from the public to which this film is shown. So this is the Babel part of it, which is that film did not have a unified language until in the second decade of the 20th century, when these large theaters were constructed in so when it is large theater, then obviously you cannot have many theaters. It will be in some select locations, but then for the capitalist machine to work, a lot of people should come, so it has to draw people from all kinds of neighborhoods. So in the sense that previously those audience which was split into Jewish groups or Italian group or white working class or all of that, or the bourgeois class, all of them had to come to the same theater, and now the films had to invent a language which will be universal. So all these assumptions about the illusion of reality, the immobile, silent, individual spectator who is watching in a dark hall, this idea that films have this particular beginning and ending, and there is this film text, all of these come from this later era in which the film theaters have become the dominant place in which you can watch a movie. So you have, that is why people can make these huge films like Intolerance, Griffith movie Intolerance, because unlike earlier, films are now not showing to small neighborhood audiences. They are showing in these big theaters in which there are lots of people. And so basically what we understand today to be a film language was evolved in these various situations. And but because all of these coexisted somewhat, like when the early film theaters came, the Nickelodeon was still in existence, and then the road shows and fairgrounds were still in existence. It is because of this overlapping, and because of this way in which very different cultures of film exhibition existed, that you can even think of some kind of resistance or some kind of alternative public sphere to this supposedly universal language called cinema. So Miriam Hansen gives a very excellent example, which is that imagine this Jewish immigrant to the US in the early 20th century, who is coming from an East European small village in which the Industrial Revolution has not yet reached. Now, all of a sudden, he comes to New York, he sees all these huge buildings, all his orientation of what is space, what is time, how does space move, how does space exist, how does time move, all of this is disoriented, right? Because it's almost like the reality itself is fantasy, in which case, how are we to say that his relation to the film text is that of the illusion of reality? So one has to actually take these things into consideration, and this is precisely where we can note a resistance to the dominant language of cinema. So it is precisely that many different ways of watching films existed in the early 20th century, where one can locate the alternative possibilities of cinema. So this is films came to India just like very so quickly after it was first exhibited by Lumiere Brothers. It was just a matter of a year or a few months or something of that sort. So this is a 1916 advertisement. It's taken from this book, Indian Cinema, very short introduction. If you look at this advertisement, you will see that two things. One, cinema is advertised along with theater, Presidency Theater, Minerva Theater, Alfred Theater, social service, exhibition, all of that. Not only that, the second thing that you can notice here is that what is being advertised is the bioscope itself, is the machine itself, rather than any particular movie. It is the technology itself which is the primary kind of attraction. Like, it's like, unlike what we know today, like, some movies getting advertised, that was not the case at that point of time. So in this context, it's also, I go to Kaushik Bhaumik's piece on how films were instituted in India. So that is, 1896, when films came to India, to 1928 period. So he says that Kaushik Bhaumik in his study, the details are noted here. He says that films in India has to be read in conjunction with the general modernization that was happening. So, in the sense that the experience of watching a movie is not very far from, is not divorced from experiencing the Indian city as a space of modernity, or experiencing the city itself. In the sense that cinema is not just what you see, cinema is also all that is happening around it, which in this case is that the city itself was new. So basically, the fascination that cinema gives is also the fascination of modernity, of a new life. So what is it? So he says about, how, I mean, it is Bombay at that point of time. Bombay itself was getting new at this point of time, because there was plague, and because of plague they had to reorder the city. They have to have a new design for the city. This was also the time in which a lot of young students and other workers from different parts of India, but especially from the neighboring states, were coming and staying as bachelors in Bombay. This is the time in which the film theaters are not just theaters, but they are also at the center of a lot of consumption activities. I mean, in the sense that it is also the part of the street in which people are playing other. There are clubs, there are other kinds of games, there are all kinds of these enchantments of modernity itself. So one cannot really understand the fascination of cinema, the effect of cinema, if one misses out this crucial urban experience that fed into cinema, and which also made cinema into a fantastic space in which they would be showing some Arabian Nights kind of story, or some very fantastic kind of movies which used to exist at that point of time. Now, that is not very far from the kind of fantastic transitions that were happening. I mean, imagine like young people going away from their homes, going into the city, living their lives alone, experiencing the world newly as individuals. That experience is connected to, I mean, of course, we always often have this association. Even we used to have this association of films and this bachelor men, right? I mean, I remember this I think it is Dhruvam, right? Mammootty movie in which Suresh Gopi is actually studying to be a priest. But then, in the night he goes to watch movies along with there are these 2-3 other people, and that is how he witnesses a particular murder. I'm not spoiling for people who haven't watched it. But there is this particular association that we have of young men staying away from their homes, and how film fits into their category, of living the world differently, living the world adventurously, living the world newly, right? So again, the point being that the text of the cinema is not very far from the kind of culture in which it is made, in the sense that it has to be read in conjunction with this culture around it. So in this week, and this is almost the last lap of my talk today. So in recent years, we have seen many books which have come out. See, there, first of all, let me say that there is an older type of sociological kind of study in which people do not look at films at all. They will just know that, okay, so some actor and he has these fans, and they wouldn't really analyze the film text at all. Now, that is not the kind of study that these books are. Now, what is special about these books is that they study the film text, but the film text is read in conjunction with the kind of things which happen around the film the cinematic institution in that culture. So it's basically in the last few years, there have been a new kind of study which will look not just at the text of the film, which is what you see in the movie, but also the kind of industry relations, the kind of cultures which exist in which these films produce their effect. We are not speaking about meaning here, we are speaking about effect, how it produces a particular, hello. Okay. Uh, Naufal, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah,
That
okay.
must be
All
some
right.
mistake.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because I can only see my screen, so I do not know what is happening. Yeah.
yeah, that may be some
Yeah.
students' mistakes. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. All right. No problem. So if you look at these particular books, and I will come to what these books are about right now. They all look at films. They look at what is happening, what is the plot, what is form of the movie, and all of that, the genre of the movie and stuff. But they also look at what is the cultural condition in which these movies can affect you. Like, so it's not just about the meaning of the movie. It is also that what is the condition in which these films can produce the kind of bodily engagement that we have. In this context, I should also mention Christopher Pinney's work on photography, which is in fact a turning point in studying studies of this sort, which is that in 1993, Christopher Pinney has this book called Camera Indica, in which he is looking at the indigenous use of media. Like, I mean, rather than using media to study indigenous people, or I mean study anthropological subjects, he is looking at how media is used by these subjects. Like, what is the kind of photography that we see in India. So in a way, these studies are, in the wake of that. I mean, these are all studies which look at what is the greater cultural context of viewing, of being around viewership, being around viewing practices that produces particular kinds of effect in these movies which come from these industries. Okay. So, the first of these books to come out here in this slide was this book by S.V. Srinivas, on your right below, Mega Star, Chiranjeevi and Telugu Cinema after N.T. Ramarao, in which, I mean, other than the discussion of the genres of film and, the film text and others, he also, S.V. Srinivas also, travels with the fans. He goes to these fan meetings of Chiranjeevi fans meeting. He studies, the kind of fan responses that Chiranjeevi gets. Now, the thing is, it is not as if it is divorced from cinema. That is my point. That is why I have chosen these books, because essentially what he is saying is that these fan cultures have a very crucial bearing on the outcome of Telugu cinema, in the sense that the reason, I mean, in fact, one of the movies we might be familiar with, you remember the Mammootty movie Hitler. So the Mammootty movie Hitler was remade in Telugu cinema, in a Telugu movie by the same name, Hitler, starring Chiranjeevi. Now, it is actually one of those, he is noting that as one of those final moments of what he calls a structural blockage, which is that, so why does S.V. Srinivas study fans? It is also to understand the kind of pressures it put on Telugu film's form. So these are connected in the sense that his greater theory would be to say that because of fan culture, which was a result of Telugu cinema adopting a particular form in a moment of crisis. In the late 1990s, it becomes a problem for Telugu film industry because the fans exert so much pressure on the stars that the Telugu film industry cannot go into new directions, but which ultimately leads to new directors and new kind of cinema, small budget cinema and all. But the thing is, the stars themselves are at the mercy of the fans. Now, so basically the reason why I'm saying about this book is because the book is not just about film, it is also about who are these I mean, the fans are the most visceral in our imagination. Of course, the most visceral judges of the movie are the fans. I mean, they dance, they clap, they throw confetti, all of that happens, right? Now, how to understand this? This is the question. Then we have this 2012 book, Tejaswini Ganti's book, Producing Bollywood, the second from the left, in which Tejaswini Ganti is doing an ethnography of the Hindi film industry. So it has a lot of interviews with known and unknown people, in the sense that some names are anonymous. I mean, some names are anonymized, some names are real, like Shah Rukh Khan, etc. It is a study basically to understand how did this transition happen from Hindi film to Bollywood film, because I mean, we somehow think that we at times think that these are same thing, but that is actually not the case. Bollywood is actually a late 90s and early 2000s creation. Hindi film was what existed, and she has her theory, which she establishes through looking at how Bollywood works. And her theory is that Bollywood is about gentrification, which is that Bollywood is the time in which the poor people were left out of Hindi film industry. I mean, I'm simplifying it, but very simplistically speaking, this is basically her theory, that Bollywood is the time in which Hindi film industry was gentrified, such that all those people who could become directors or whoever through apprenticeship, all of them are now gone. Now people have to come in studying in film schools and all of that, and all the poor people are out. It's all about these very closed network of people and things of that sort. But again, the point is, it is not about the film text as I mean, it is film text. I mean, very simply, where did all the poor people go from all these Bollywood movies? We do not see poor people anymore, right? And connecting it to the industry changes in Bollywood itself. Now, when we come to this 2013 book, Bombay Before Bollywood, by Rosie Thomas, again, she asked basically, it's a book which looks at the production of film before Hindi film industry became Bollywood. So again, it is a connection of how particular film forms are arrived at and how it affects people based on interviews and studying people. And very interestingly, it is also a study of an industry which does not have any text, right? In the sense that I mean, as you know, Bombay film industry, especially before the late 90s, or was notorious for being funded by black money, right? So obviously there's no paper. Now her book is interesting because she is trying to document all this process for which essentially no paper exists. There's no paper trail. So she has to construct this entire mechanism through speaking to people. Another 2013 book here, Lotte Hoek's Cut Pieces, is actually about a very interesting phenomenon, which is about this soft porn movies which are made in Bangladesh. So, so there is this film text, obviously. So this is these are soft porn movies. I mean, there is a narration, but there is also it's also a lot about titillation and about nudity, I mean, providing all kinds of other kinds of thrills. Now, Lotte Hoek basically, travels to Bangladesh and looks at the production, looks at the career of a movie which is anonymized as Mintu the Murderer, which is not the, I mean, basically it's not the title of the real movie. It is just a title that she gave so that she can hide the identities. So, she's looking at the conception level, she's looking at the production, she's also looking at the screening of the movie. So she's making this journey in Bangladesh. I mean, she's going to the capital, but she's also going to these far remote areas to see how these movies, basically these are movies which has obscenity. So, these cut pieces actually refer to this condition in which these theater exhibitors, as they are playing the movie, when they see that the situation is right, okay, there is no people coming from the authorities, they will put pornography, right? So it's actually about this particular phenomenon. So she's looking at people who make these movies and what are the conditions in which these movies are exhibited. But the thing is, I mean, she has very important things to say about film, especially, I mean, what does it mean for something called a film text when you can, again, I mean, this is what she's showing, that, the theater people can decide whether to show pornography or not to show pornography. I mean, whether to show these cut pieces or not to show these cut pieces. So basically, all of these unsettle our assumptions of there being a stable film form, right? So it's again a study which looks at the film text, but also looks at the culture around this film text. Now, this last book that I have referring to here is the 2018 book, Deities and Devotees by Uma Brugubanda, a teacher of mine, whose book again looks at the mythological genre in Telugu cinema, but she's also going to this I mean, she's also going in search of these people who supposedly had I mean, who became possessed, if you understand. So there'll be all these Devi films, goddess films, and there are all these rumors. I mean, let's say there are all these hearsays about some women getting possessed as this movie was playing in the theater, and even advertisements, newspaper advertisements of these movies will actually feature these things, that actually in this place this woman got possessed as she was. So it's kind of like it's almost like saying that the film had the presence of goddess herself. So there are these Uma in her book, she looks at all these elaborate things which happen around the screening, like setting up small makeshift temple kind of stuff, or going to the village in search of these possessed women, like so trying to understand what is the nature of this possession. So again, it is a study of a film text, of many film texts, but also in conjunction with what is this culture in which there can be possession. when there is a film about a goddess. Uh, so these are basically some of the readings which I thought offers us some way of studying film as a matter of effect, uh, rather than, I mean, of course, we are much more used to a very semiotic, very meaning making kind of studies of film in which we analyze films for the narrative or for the formal properties, the kind of meanings that it can give us and how it is connected to ideology. While on the other hand, you can see that there is this affective turn which has happened in film studies in recent years. So I mean, these are all recent works: 2009, 2012, 13, 18, which therefore brings us to, I mean, I want to basically conclude by saying that, I mean, in the recent years, on the one hand, we have the film industry have become much more wider. I mean, film industry, as far as we are concerned. But at the same time, we also see that there is a lot more fascination about cinema. Like, there are all these movies which are about making cinema. I should say that I have watched only two of these movies. Be Kind, Rewind is about these two guys that you can see here, who works in a video store, and because of an accident all their videos get erased, and now when customers come to rent a movie, they have to say, okay, come after 2 days, and they kind of act out the movie with whatever resources they have and make that I mean, make their own movie basically. Or all of us know about Halal Love Story. So in the sense that, what is the fascination of cinema? And perhaps one can go back and go back to Tom Gunning and say that it is about this marvel, this space of marvel that is cinema itself. In the sense that, if today, when all of us make all kinds of movies on Instagram or on WhatsApp statuses and stuff, perhaps the fascination that movie still holds for us is that essentially it is a space of alienation, that it is a space that is not natural to us. It is about the marvels of technology itself. And perhaps that is precisely, I mean, what are the sources of this wonder is precisely one way we can inquire about this. Cinema Bundy is on Netflix. Haven't watched it. I've been told by friends that it's a fascinating movie on a group of amateurs making a movie. Faiza Khan's Superman of Malegaon is, by the way, a very famous documentary on this Malegaon film industry. So there is this place near Mumbai called Malegaon, in which they have a very local film industry, like our home cinema, by the way. And it's about the people who work there, people who make movies there, and their movies are like kind of parodies or pastiche, and it's about that. So what is this fascination with cinema itself? Cinema itself, even though we are all making videos, how can one still think about the fascination of cinema? So this is basically what I mean. The ways of studying this fascination is what I wanted to explore with you in this talk, and that is where I will stop. So thank you, everyone.
All right, Shafeeq, that was nice. I suppose we should have a detailed discussion on some of the points I don't know. I felt there are something that I wanted to discuss. But before we leave the floor open for discussions, I have a couple of housekeeping steps to inform you. I've shared two links in the chat box, one for the review and one for the attendance. The attendance link might be accessible for those who have made the payments for the certificates. We have their names listed out. So those who haven't made the payments may not get that names listed there. All right. So we're leaving it open for discussions. Please turn your mic on and start. I think you can ask your questions in Malayalam too. It's totally fine with Shafeeq, I suppose. Right?
Hello.
Yeah, Sunil, go ahead.
Yes. Am I audible to you?
Yes, yes, you are.
Okay. Thank you for this presentation. I think Mr. Shafiq. I am Sunil. I'm also a teacher. I have some of the observation which I would raise. Not as a, you don't have to take this as questions, but I expect your responses also. One. Regarding that point about these soft porn movies, you mentioned about the pleasure that it provides is a kind of other pleasure. Can you explain that the other pleasure? What did you actually mean by the other pleasure? It provides some kind of other pleasure. One thing. Second thing, you said film makes or cinema makes a kind of illusion of the reality, and if it makes an illusion of the reality, don't you feel that this illusion of the reality is a possibility of the alternative reality? Second question. And if it is an alternative reality, how far it is good or how far it is worse than the actual reality? Uh, Another thing, your presentation was all from the perspective of the camera and the textuality of the movie, I think. But from the perspective of the receiver, what do you think does film or cinema make the pleasure, or how does it provide the pleasure? What is the actual pleasure of the viewer? These are the three things I wanted to raise. As I told you, you don't have to take it as questions, but I think this observation would raise some, or invite some comments from you. Thank you.
Yeah, Sunil, I'm not sure I said these cut pieces provide other pleasures. Did I say it exactly like that?
Yes, yes, yes.
No, in the sense, see, that book is about these exhibitors
Yeah,
putting
especially
this.
one point, especially because we have a very broad, very acknowledged porn industry, and I also did some research on this porn industry and the pleasure that it provides. So I was curious about, and I'm excited also to see what are the ingredients of. If you mentioned it as a theoretical, in the context, theoretical context, this other pleasure.
No, in see, the thing is, I mean, the most obvious thing is porn industry provides physical pleasure. I mean, that is the most visceral aspect of porn industry. But that is no. Lotte Hoke is speaking about other pleasures, which is that it's like, I mean, in order to spoil the book for you a little bit, which is that, so Lotte Hoek makes this. So she goes to these theaters where they make these exhibitions. So, one thing she notices is that they will never play these clips as long as she is there. They will somehow make sure that she goes out. And once she's out of the theater, she can actually hear that they are playing the clip. Now, this is actually an important theoretical point, in the sense that if you look at the discussion of cinema, for example, coming back from MSS Pandian's discussion on MGR movies, cinema is the first entertainment media in India in which people were not placed according to castes. The first public entertainment medium in India, generally South Asia. So people used to theorize about theater as it is a public space, as a place in which you can see some idea of a democracy, liberal democracy, in the sense that if you have money, you can buy a particular ticket. So it's an idea of a liberal democracy. Now, Lotte Hoek is actually saying that a theater, rather than being a public sphere, can also be an intimate public sphere. Because if it was just a public sphere, she could have been there and the pornographic clips could have played. But part of the pleasure of playing a pornographic clip is to actually produce the sense of community. So if you go back to Madhav Prasad's argument about Hindi film, he says that Hindi film is not film because what it produces, what it denies is this public sphere, is this individual subject, because it produces a feudal look, a communitarian effect, right? And there it is actually by screening away, I mean, in the sense that by blocking any kind of obscenity, any kind of individuation. Lotte Hoek is saying, on the other hand, pornography is supposed to be very individuating, in the sense that when we understand pornography, we think that it is somehow to be watched alone. But when all these people, including young kids, there are all these people that she interviews in the book, when all of them are there from the same locality in a theater, watching this pornographic clip, it produces this intimate public within that theater space. So that is her that is her argument there with connection to this cut pieces. So it has to do, obviously it is a very fundamental point as far as film studies is concerned, because the assumption, all these assumptions, theater as a public space, or individuation versus communal look, all of that. Now, film makes the illusion of reality is a theoretical premise. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that in the post-60s, that is one of the premises of film theory, that film produces the illusion of reality, which is why all these theories are asking this question as to how do we enter into that space. So that is actually the major concern of that era, 60s to 80s. Laura Mulvey writes in 1975, but 68 is when this very important editorial in that French journal Cahiers du Cinéma appears on ideology and criticism. So it is taken to be granted that film is an illusion. Film provides an illusion of reality, which is why we are affected by it. Because otherwise, why will we affect if it is distinct from us? So that was one of the premises of that theory. And what is the actual pleasure of the viewer is, that is precisely why the culture is getting investigated. Because you cannot assume that there is a universal pleasure. One has to see that pleasures are produced in the specific context in which a film unfolds, which is the reason why one has to study film culture that way. Because in different cultures, the kind of pleasures that a film produces can be very different. Yeah.
Shafeeq, we have a comment in the chat box, which is, should I read it out? Monica Mendes, right? Yeah, the session is excellent. It gave me new insights into the nature and workings of Western cinema and South Asian cinema. So that's supposed to be a compliment, I think. Shafeeq, can I share some of my thoughts? I was wondering, how do you look at this when you were mentioning the illusion, if I got it correct, the as Sunil was also trying to connect it, the alternative reality that we might be trying to make through illusion. When it comes to film, it seems to be the space from which we are trying to look or watch, rather look at the people being portrayed, or watch film, plays a crucial role, right? I mean, the whole discussion about the platform, for instance, let's say whether it should be in OTT or it should be in theater, revolves around more than the financial aspect of it. From the perspective of the spectators, it's crucial in the kind of impact the film is going to have on the spectator, right? But we don't see this kind of discussion about the ingredient of the illusion making elements in other forms of literature, like in the I don't know if there was any discussion about the kind of pages, the quality of pages or the color of pages in the prints of novels, or I don't know if anybody noticed the changes of font in Madhubhumi or Madhyamam weeklies that they had recently, which is also something I suppose influenced the kind, I mean the reception of the content they're trying to convey. So if you're trying to look at it, both these uh, in a way that these two are two spaces, the discussion about OTT or theater, and the ideas of the font used in novels, or the kinds of pages that are used in a book. We don't see that kind of a discussion very much affecting the print media, I mean, not media, the print literature, as it is affecting in film. Do you see any preference? I mean, this indicate any preference we have for film in these days? I don't know if I conveyed it properly, Shafeeq.
Yes, I mean, I understand the question, but I do not really know how to respond to it. In the sense that, see, reading is actually also a visual activity, in the sense that not that literal reading. But if you look at, for example, Wolfgang Iser, Phenomenology of Reading, right? I think it would have come in the same time as all this. He is saying that, I mean, this entire phenomenology concept in which subject and object is not divided, but actually in Congress, right? He is saying that when we read Jane Austen or someone like that, it is not like everything is described to us. So, you know, I mean, it might say that there is this room, and then there was this, you know, there is on this cupboard, there is this particular, let's say, this particular flower or something. But the thing is, when you read, even though the book says only that much, the novel says only that much, you can in fact see the entire room. And that is how literature works, in the sense that literature works not precisely by the written word, but how phenomenologically we make sense of it by actually visualizing it. You know, since it happens in our head and our head is the same, I think maybe that's why it's not really that much of a problem. Though, of course, when fonts change a lot, many things change. In the sense that our primary association changes, right? In we feel that it's not a familiar space, all of that. So phenomenologically, it does make a difference. Now, the theater, when it comes to cinema, it's precisely this question of attraction, which is that cinema, as far as in day-to-day life is concerned, we know that cinema is not just about the story of the movie. Because we can go to a movie even if we know the story of a movie. We can watch a movie precisely because cinema gives all kinds of different kinds of pleasures. It's not just about knowing the story. Now then, it is just a question of what medium can be most effective in conveying those pleasures. So every genre will not require huge screens, but some genres will feel very incomplete without those huge screens. I mean, that is one aspect of it. And then there is, of course, all the other idea of communal watching and things of that sort, but which we know, I mean, as students we know that even if when we were watching from computer screens, 4 or 5 of us used to watch it together, and there used to be, I mean, all kinds of discussion and things of that sort. So it's perhaps because cinema is primarily visual, it has to have this question about how best to visualize it, and I think it's just a natural natural consequence of that medium. Naufal, I have not answered the question, but I just added my own confusion to your question. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was also not able to properly place it as a question. There's a question in the chat box. I'll read it out for you. This is from Maria Vike. Would you please comment on the implications of this evolution of film theory in relation to Tamil film industry, especially how the caste question is openly addressed in commercial films today? Shafeeq, I wanted you to add that aspect also, like the transition in film industry, which I suppose doesn't come under your specified design of the talk. However, there's this transition into an ideological tool or a political, expression. That kind of film was being used rather than earlier those train coming to station, that kind of a film. It was gradually being used as an ideological tool, or to propagate their ideology or propaganda, whatever, and then later into the as a platform to express their political statements or expressions. So would you connect that into the caste question and place it?
I mean, well, I cannot really speak about that, but at the same time, one see, on the one hand, Tamil film industry has a very long history of using films for political purposes. So DMK or DK, Dravid Karagam, right from the beginning in the 50s, or in 50s is when MGR makes his entry, but even before that, so MGR becomes their like most visible face. But I mean, they in Tamil film industry, film was always recognized as a very powerful propaganda tool to spread So in the sense that there is that tradition is important. The other thing is also the kind of politics is important. The kind of political tradition is also important, in the sense that for example, in Kerala, we caste is a question we all know exists, but our resolution, like the very dominant resolution of the caste question was to erase it. So to not discuss it, somehow translate it into a class question. Now Tamil tradition of politics is an anti-Brahmin, anti-Hindi. I mean, it has a tradition of anti-Brahmin, anti-Hindi politics, which means that there was already a groundwork laid there, which can take the form of, anti-caste criticism that happens in films today. That is one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is that whether it is Malayalam or Tamil or Hindi, there is this recently there is this turn away. I mean, there is some kind of a turn which features places which are away from the mainstream. So whether it's in Hindi cinema, for example, earlier much of the movies used to take place in Bombay or Mumbai, but then recent years have seen films first going to Delhi, and then going to places like some place in Uttar Pradesh, or some place in Bihar, some place in Madhya Pradesh. We have had in the last 1 decade, we have had all kinds of such movies. If you look at Malayalam cinema, you see that movies are now, like set in. I mean, instead of mostly being in some city or Palakkad, movies are now can be set in Malappuram. They can be set in Idukki. They can be set in Kasargod, right? In the sense that we see that there is a new turn. It has to do with the value in difference itself. It has to do with globalization, and the kind of value system that comes about in globalization, all of that. But at the same time, one cannot simply look at it as some kind of commercial enterprise. It also provides many directors the correct occasion to foreground certain discriminations which has been unaddressed in for so long. And so it's not just a question of it being one dimensional. There are multi dimensions to this question. So I think that has, I mean, in my very limited way, I guess I have answered that question.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, sir. My question is that if we see Malayalam movie, especially Malayalam film industry, so many movies are coming regarding this Christian film culture. Even the last one was Lucifer also. So my question is why the population is very meager here. All the youngsters are migrating. Still, it is there. So the people, I'm being a Christian, I know, but still, all the other people I meet always ask me, your culture is like that. We know it from films. And nowadays, I know my generation, even my cousins are migrating fast like anything. So my question is, what is the reason? Do you have any idea behind it? Your class was excellent about the film culture. So you have anything to contribute to that point?
Yes, I mean, very simply, it is very amenable to film culture. It is very amenable to film in the sense that we have had Christian films for a long time. It is already established, right? I mean, it is not something which is in a phenomenon of the 2000s. The Christian home is a very well established cinematic space in Malayalam cinema from so long back. I mean, as far as whenever I have been watching movies, they were there. So you have all these movies, right? I mean, for example, there will be this Tilagan as a patriarch Christian. I'm referring to that movie Jairam Tilagan. You remember?
വീണ്ടും
This
ചില വീട്ടുകാര്യങ്ങൾ, right?
no. Oh,
No.
much long back. Jairam gets married to Tilagan's daughter, and because he's coming from a poor family, he's almost like a
Sunita.
worker.
I remember that. I remember.
Remember?
He's a very rich guy. Tilagan is a rich.
Yeah, Telugu.
I remember.
But
I
it's
don't
one of
know.
those high range areas.
Yeah, I know
Yeah,
that
remember.
Idiki Gold type of guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Similarly, you have this Mammootty movie in which he is this fish. He's connected to this fish business.
Fish business.
Not fish business. I mean, Kirakan Patros. I think it was.
Kirkan Patros. I know.
I mean, ever since I have been watching movie, in the sense that we have, unlike let's say a Muslim household, which can come into a movie not as a social, not as a social subject, but only as a religious subject,
Okay.
like ghazal, or it is it is usually quite an enclosed Muslim space. If you look at Muslim movies, there'll be hardly any non-Muslims there, if you have noticed, because it's all about religion and different. Unlike that, and which is very rare, if you look at Malayalam movies which are placed in Muslim households, they are most probably less than 10
Yeah,
in
that's
all.
true. That's why
Yeah,
I asked.
my 5 or 6. But the thing, so it's also about there were features in a Muslim household which were basically not amenable to a film culture. So it's also, I mean, it's actually a very interesting question, because it is also about who can be filmed. Yeah, so it's so easy to make a Christian movie because it appears so natural. That is very simple. Simply the
That's the
case.
simple answer. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's about, like, once you have a particular tradition, the tradition acquires a life of its own, right? It's
Yeah,
not
that's
like every time you have to think about it. After
that's
some
true.
time, it becomes one of the easy options.
Yeah, that's true.
So Manassinakere, for example,
Sheila's movie.
it doesn't matter, right? Whether it's Christian or Hindu, it doesn't really matter, because it's a story. It's just right.
Satyanand.
But the thing is, imagine Kilichundan Mambaram is very deeply Muslim, in the sense that that entire story is premised on polygamy,
Okay.
right? It has to be. I mean, you cannot imagine in a natural. But similarly, if you look at that other movie, if you look at this Murali and I think Murali and Manoj K. Jain as two brothers who have the same wife,
Vengalam.
Vengalam. Vengalam is about a particular caste. It is
Yeah.
not a universal movie. It has to be established. Similarly is the case with Kilichundan Mambaram. It cannot be a universal movie. But if you take a Christian topic, like even Niram, let's say,
Niram.
it doesn't matter. You understood? I mean, all those Christian paraphernalia will be there. That Saint Thomas himself came and converted my grandfather will be there.
That's the for the ages. That
Yeah,
will be
it is
still
always
running.
there, but it doesn't really
Christianity
matter.
and all, still it's running in the film.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter, right?
That's
So that it's an easy choice also. So it's also part of a tradition. But it's also ultimately also a question of who can be filmed, or
okay.
whose interior spaces are open.
Okay. Do
All
you
of
have
that,
any books or something, any journals that we can read more about it?
More about what?
More about this topic.
This Christian topic? I
This
think you will
question.
have to write the essay.
Oh God.
Yeah,
Okay,
in
let
the
me
sense
see.
that it's but you can, of course, there are some essays on Malayalam cinema which appears in South Asian popular culture. Some of it actually is relevant, especially recently. there was something on Christianity in Malayalam cinema.
Okay.
Very recent. And I think, as far as I remember, it came out in South Asia Popular Culture. South Asia Popular Culture
Okay.
journal. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Could you please
Uh,
suggest some books on Tamil cinema? I would first suggest Swarnavel Ishwaran's book. I don't remember the title of the book, but Swarnavel Ishwaran, just check.
Yeah, I'll check it.
Swarnavel
Okay.
Ishwaran, and then there is of course Dickens. It's not a book. I mean, he has articles on Tamil cinema. Dickens Leonard, who is also a friend. Then
Okay.
there is Preminda Jacob, who is looking at somewhat a little earlier kind of Tamil cinema. I mean, in the sense that
Okay.
her book is again one of these ethnographic books on
Oh,
Tamil,
okay.
how it affects people, like all those poster
Yeah,
painting
yeah.
people, many different aspects of Tamil cinema.
Okay, okay. I actually wanted it for my research purpose. That's why.
Yeah, so
Okay.
maybe you can check this. Hmm.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you so much.
all right, Shafiq, can we wind it up? We're closing to 9:30, so we don't have any formal sessions of vote of thanks or anything. We will just leave as the discussion start. We just
So
walk in,
yeah,
we just
again,
leave.
thanks for coming on a Friday evening. This is more
Yeah,
than what can I
and
expect.
yeah, thanks for joining the discussions
Mm,
also.
mm.
Thank you guys. We hope we will see you on Monday. We have a discussion on sports culture by Dr. Veena Mani. So we'll see you on Monday. And thank you guys. Good night.
Bye.
Yeah.